Mr. Speaker, I want to ask about the idea that about the not forcing public employees anymore to pay the equivalent of union dues, fair share.
You mean not collecting it for the union directly? Is that?
Is there also not a provision about fair share?
Yes.
Okay, saying you don't need to pay the fair share anymore to be a public employee.
Right.
Do you see that as the first step toward eventually enacting some kind of similar right to work provision for private company workers and the like?
No.
And why is that?
Well, because the situation in private companies is quite different. In fact, Lou, maybe you would want to describe what goes on under the National Labor Relations Agreement.
Yeah, in response to that, a public entity like the City of Columbus, if they're negotiating with their employees, they can't move out of state. They can't move their factories to Tijuana. They can't do anything. They're a captive audience. So it's a lot different in the public sector than it is in the private sector. We have an obligation as being, quote, the state government to take care of the state employees, and local governments here take care of the public employees. As far as what a private business does with their workforce, that's up to them. That's up to them. There's a huge difference.
So there'll be no move in the Ohio House this session as the right to work amendment on the ballot. Is that correct?
Not that we're aware of.
You ruling it out, Mr. Speaker?
Yes.
Well, that's pretty definitive.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, this
My
on the
screen.
screen says saving the middle class. The other side is using the phrase attack on the middle class. Is that what the referendum battle is going to come down to?
Yeah, that's really what it's about. At the end of the day, you have people who are presently in a position to control their pay and control their benefits. Benefits are a big piece of this too, of course. Control that, and the other people are not in that position. They've got to take what's left over when their employer runs out of money. It's just there's no coherence between the statement that is being made about the middle class and union recognition, obviously. But the other people very definitely are affected by this. We want to get up so that people understand, by being able to see what you have seen here today, that there's a great deal of misrepresentation and outright fraud in this area. We want people to understand that what's going on, and in response to inquiries and questions, we want to be able to provide answers to them as well. So we're looking forward very actively to the informational part of this campaign. That's the first thing that we want to do.
The potential savings of SB 5 for local governments and for state government depend a lot on how the leaders apply it. There was the DAS analysis that said it would be $1.1 billion for local governments, just assuming that the healthcare savings were there and that there were no step increases and no longevity pay. But do you think some school districts or city halls might have to go beyond just tamping down the healthcare costs and the step increases and actually impose pay cuts for their employees, given the amount of, the funding cuts to schools are pretty significant?
The reality of the thing is that obviously it's going to be left to the local people, and that's the reason we put this bill together in the way that we did, and why the local people outside of those who control the school or the county or the township have the right to appeal in circumstances that are out of whack in terms of local benefits that other people are getting. And so I couldn't tell you what would happen. That's up to the local people.
I had this discussion with a number of members yesterday, because the city managers, some of them were saying, well, we should be able to negotiate these health benefits. And the issue is they can continue to pay whatever they want to pay. The point is that when the public hears, and this is why I made this part of my opening remarks, when the public hears the salary, that's generally what the public says, because typically the benefits aren't part of the public story. You know, this fellow's starting at $95,000, is that too much or is that too little? If the public now says, well, you know, because there's not gonna be a pension pickup, if you wanna pay somebody $105,000 because they're not getting that benefit, they can. The difference is now the public knows the true compensation package. That's what's happening. And here's the key difference between a private sector union and a public sector union. I don't wanna dwell on this too much because I think we all know this, but I really have to give this example. When UAW and Ford go into a negotiation, we have the union negotiators trying to get the best agreement for their members. That's their job. Ford management is doing the best job that they can for themselves and their shareholders. But both of those groups, even though they're negotiating with each other, have a common goal, and that's to put a product out that the customer will buy. And they know that no matter what how much is the cost of the labor that goes in this, it can't be so much that the product is too high that the customer won't buy it. Because if the customer says it's too expensive, they go buy a Chrysler, or they go buy a Chevy, or they buy a Honda. That's what the customer does. When the governmental entity and a public employee union begin to negotiate, and they go back and forth about what the cost of that is, they have the same thing. The governmental negotiators are saying, well, gee, we've got taxpayers out there, and the unions are over there are saying, we've got these folks. And they're both doing the same thing in terms of getting the best deal at the plate. But the difference is this. If the cost of that product is too high and the customer doesn't want to pay, the customer doesn't walk away. If the customer won't pay the product or won't pay the cost of that, the customer goes to jail. That's what we do with our customers if they don't pay the bill we send them. And if that's not a significant difference in how negotiations are, that, you know, there isn't any significant difference. And so that to me is the key difference. And so we have to have some guideposts, some guardrails that heretofore in the past 30 years aren't in place. And I think that really needs for the public to do that. So I think we've got to go to caucus and then session. So one more question, Mr. Speaker.
If the goal is to help city officials, you know, rein in costs, control their budgets, why take away fair share fees and why take away any automatic PAC
Well,
from paychecks?
Well, first of all, the controlling government costs are only one of the goals of the legislation. The other goals are transparency and fairness. I'm sure everyone up here, and probably all of you, know folks who have come to you and said, they're taking my money and spending it on political ads that I don't agree with. You may have a person who is pro-Second Amendment, who's right to life, who doesn't agree with, and unfortunately, national and state associations have spent money on lots of political issues that have nothing to do with their membership. And so if you saw a pretty dramatic example of that when Representative Thompson's wife, who's a teacher, she was on TV recently talking about the fact that her union dues were used in a political campaign against her husband by the association that she was a member of, an association that by law she was forced to give money to under the current legal system. So all we're simply saying here, folks, is if you want to kind of contribute to these organizations, if these organizations want to raise political funds, they can do it like everybody else. They can send out mailers and they can have fundraisers and they can ask the folks, you know, the Ohio State Bar Association can raise money for things that they want to from its members. Lawyers can give if they want. Same with the Ohio State Medical Association, all of these other organizations. But when it's mandated by law that you give money to a political organization, that's the kind of unfairness to those employees that we're trying to end. So, yeah, I'm sorry.
Let me follow up on that. We could have done what the unions did. I mean, it's a forced deduction. We're taking your money, we're spending it. We could have said, gee, corporations, let's just allow you to do exactly what the unions do. The CEO of a company says we're making deductions from every employee's dues. We're going to spend the money how we like. Oh, we didn't think that was too good of an idea. All this does is make the unions do the same thing a corporate PAC does. They need a signature saying, hey, we're willing to give our money and yada, yada, yada. It's the same thing the corporate employees have to do.
What about the fair share fee then? Why give
Why?
it back?
Why should they have to pay it in the first place? That's what I would turn it around. If they don't wanna be in an organization, why should they have to pay for it? That's a question we can't answer, so that's why we got rid of it.
Thank you very much.